Hi everyone, before we get started, I'm going to draw our $10 Amazon gift card. Pam Martin. All right, our next presentation is 7 Problems Music Teachers Can Solve by Adam Cole. Adam is a jazz and classical pianist and a performance and confidence coach and the director of Willow Music in Atlanta, Georgia. Adam received his BA from Oberlin College and his BM and MM from Georgia State School of Music. He's also the producer of the YouTube channel, Truer MU. Without further ado, welcome Adam Cole.
Thank you very much for being here. I'm really pleased to present to you today. Today's presentation is 7 Problems Music Teachers Can Solve, How to Find and Reach Your Best Students. Before I get into that, let's take a look at the 7 problems. And I'm wondering if you think you could solve these problems as a music teacher. And you don't have to answer out loud, you can just think to yourself. Could you solve the problem of safety as a music teacher? Belonging and love? How about esteem? Cognition? Aesthetics? Self-actualization? How about transcendence? I imagine everyone in this room could probably solve at least one of those problems. Raise your hand if you think you could solve at least one of those problems for your students. 2, 5, who thinks they could solve all 7? Okay, good. Nobody does. All right, that's good, because I think by the end you'll realize that you can. First, I'd like to know more about who I'm speaking to. If you are a private music teacher of any kind, and you have a studio, please raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you. If you are a classroom music teacher, please raise your hand. Okay. If you are a member of the Georgia Motor Trucking Association and you have no idea why you're in this room, please raise your hand. Yes, sorry, it's next door. GMTA, I know, confusing. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a jazz and classical pianist, and I'm also a church organist. I'm the organist for First Christian Church of Decatur, and that's relatively new, learning to play the organ. I'm also devoted to helping piano teachers and music teachers in general discover themselves as marketers and being able to promote their studios and find out more about themselves. Basically, my main mantra is whatever you're doing, I want to help you get to the next level. And I'd love to do that with my piano students, especially my adults. I've got these 7 problems that music teachers can solve from Maslow's revised hierarchy of needs. How many of you ever seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs? If you ever went to college, you probably found this. Maslow was a psychologist who in the 1940s created this pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid he put all the things that we need at a basic level. You can't read this, but I'll read it to you. Breathing, food, water, all the things that you can't live without. And at the top he put things about self-actualization, morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, those kinds of things. And then in the middle, the further up you go, the more esoteric the needs get. Now, a little later in the 70s, he revised his model to create a motivation model. And this is a little easier to see. The psychological needs are at the bottom, transcendence is at the top. I want to point out a few things about this model that you should know. First of all, Maslow never had it in mind that you should start at the bottom and work your way up. Maslow was always of the opinion that, first of all, you could start anywhere on this pyramid. Your problems might start in aesthetic needs, and then, you might work your way up or down. Or you might have more than one problem. Can you imagine that? Yeah, so you can have more than one problem. The reason I bring this in here is because we as piano teachers or flute teachers or any other kind of music teacher, we want to attract our clients to us. And attracting clients really means solving a problem. And the more profound the problem you can solve, the more happy they will be to be with you. You're looking for a problem that is keeping them up at night, that they can't sleep. So yes, we can solve all 7 of these problems, but if you can find the problem you solve the best, you will be attracting the student to you that you most want to teach. Now, you can solve other problems for that student, but you're looking for the best match. For instance, I am not that interested in teaching virtuosos. I do not want people coming to me who say, all right, little Johnny is a brilliant pianist and we want him to practice 2 hours a day and we want him to be, someday a conservatory teacher or performer. That's not my bag. That's not what I do. I'm happy to teach that student, but I'm not attracting those people. I'm attracting typically neurodiverse kids who come to me and want to learn, or their parents want them to learn something about the piano, and they don't necessarily know what. And then what I'm teaching them is how to overcome whatever obstacles they have to becoming a more accomplished person. And we do that through the piano. So that's my particular niche. So in this way, I have a relationship with my students that's a good match. And so let's talk about what these 7 problems are. Now, if you are sharp-eyed, you notice that that pyramid had 8 levels, not 7. First of all, I thought 7 problems was snazzier of a title than 8 problems, so I took one out. But really the reason is because the bottom, physiological needs, we do solve this problem for our students, but we don't find it tasteful to talk about it. Basically, the bottom level is the problem of money, right? We do teach our students how to make a living, some way. It's, how do I survive as a human being? How am I going to eat? Well, I'm teaching you skills that you can use as an accompanist, or as a professor, or as a performer, but we don't tend to market to that. It's too much for kids, hey, come and I'll turn your kid into a millionaire. We can't keep that promise. But it's still kind of inherent in all we do. So I wanted to make sure you knew that's a problem we solve, but we don't really talk about. You might want to, if you really want to go that route, but that's why there's 8 levels and I'm only talking about 7. The first one is safety, and this may come as a surprise to all of us that we actually can create safety for our students. But I'm talking about safety in a very interesting way. Safety is our biological birthright. We are trained through our nervous system to learn how to walk upright and to be safe in our bodies against the pull of gravity, to get what we want in a way that is most efficient and easy. I'm trained as a Feldenkrais teacher, and Feldenkrais is my particular approach to this. So I think about music teaching as a way of teaching people that physiological and emotional even safety through music. So if you want to teach safety to your students, then the problem you are most likely to present is you want to feel safe and effective in your body. I can help. As an example, I want to show you something about scales. When you practice scales, of course, you're going to do better and better in scales if you are more well-organized at the piano. And I'm going to step away from the mic to show you this. We know that if our students are huddled over the piano like this, it's going to be very hard for them to feel free in their arms and stuff like this. And what you really want them to be is just relaxed. You don't even have to look at the piano. You can just have a conversation. That kind of thing. So in order for me to do this, I have to be well balanced on my sits bones. I have to be able to breathe. I have to have a sense of my body and feel very confident. And I can take these skills away from the piano and I can bring them into my regular life. I can use it to walk more comfortably, to look you in the eye instead of looking away, to present myself, to reach comfortably, to get something off a shelf. So I am creating safety for my students. So it's really funny because you do have musicians who are actually incredibly well organized at their instrument, but then they leave their instrument and then they go back to this thing. It's kind of a strange thing. But if we point out to students that they are developing this kind of bodily intelligence and that they can take it with them, then we can help them create safety. So this is the first problem we can solve for our students. The second one is a little more obvious, belonging and love. Music provides community, and it cannot be made without it. I would argue that if you are making music but no one is listening, you're just playing. It's not really music. You need at least one person to be receiving. And even better, you need a community of people to be receiving, an audience. And we create that for our students. We provide them the opportunity to be a part of something, either a part of an organization of other musicians, or other music teachers, or simply a group of people who want to hear them play. We create community for our students. And so if this is the problem you are solving, you say, you want to be part of the community. I can help. This is a problem I can solve. Are you lonely? I can help you. Don't lie awake at night feeling lonely. Be a musician and you can be part of a community. And as an example, I'd like to tell you what I do in lieu of a winter recital, how I create community in my studio. We have a spring recital, which is pretty normal, which is what most people do, where you memorize a piece and you perform it for everyone. But for the winter show, I don't like to do that. Instead, I've created something called the Winter Share. And the Winter Share is sort of stylized after a Quaker meeting, in which my students are allowed to bring anything they want to the concert, but they have to volunteer to come up and play it. And it doesn't have to be finished, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it could even be improvised. But they have to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm coming up now. So we all sit, and I say, if nobody wants to come up, then we'll go eat. We're done. No big deal. But what happens is, all my students do this. They all volunteer to come up. And, generally they do really well. And this creates an atmosphere where they don't feel like they have to be perfect when they perform. And it's a wonderful they have to be perfect for the spring show. Everybody knows it, but they've had a chance to come up, do their thing, and we clap to thank them. We don't clap how good they are. We clap to say, thank you for coming up. And we create this wonderful, warm feeling in the room. Among all the students and the parents, everybody knows it's just going to be a relaxed experience, and everybody's going to do the best they can, and everybody does great. So this is how I create community. And you have your own ways of creating community. Some ways that are so astounding that I get scared just looking at them. I read the magazine about how people create community, and I'm like, oh, wow, I need to try some of those. So esteem. This is another one that isn't too hard to understand. Performance ability can provide, if it's done correctly, self-esteem. It can also rip a self-esteem apart. So we have to be very, very careful. If we are trying to build self-esteem, then we need to be sure we are promoting our students' sense of self and sense of confidence, and not just teaching them to be tough virtuosos. So this is a particular angle you go at where you may want to downplay the product and upplay the process. Or perhaps you're really good at getting them to be a performer. If esteem is your bag, if esteem is the thing that you want, then you will say, you want to value yourself and be valued by others. I can help. And my favorite example about this in my studio is a student I'm going to call the perfectionist. If he ever catches this, I'm videoing this. If he ever watches this, he may know who he is. This poor guy came to my studio at 6 or 7 years old, and he was already a perfectionist. Every time he messed up, every time, he just crumpled up, he got angry. And over the course of 5 or 6 years, we trained that out of him. I said, it's okay. Just go ahead and make mistakes. You're going to make them. Relax. It's fine. He still gets irritated when he makes mistakes, but it's not the same thing. It's not affecting his body anymore. It's not affecting his sense of self. He goes up, he performs, he makes mistakes. I say, how did you think you did? He said, well, I made this mistake and I made that mistake, and I'll do better next time. I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's great. So that changed his sense of self. He didn't have to be perfect all the time. Self-esteem. The next one is cognitive, and this one may be a little harder for you to find. Of course, we all know that music makes you smarter. We've heard that, but I take issue with that statement. I don't like it, because people don't tend to understand what it means. They think it means that if you put Mozart on and you sit there on the couch, you're going to walk away from that couch smarter. But that's not how music makes us smarter. Music makes us smarter because music makes us think like musicians. And musicians think like mathematicians. And they think like scientists. And they think like writers. And so in order to make music, you must get smarter. That's how music makes you smarter. And so if you are focused on the actual thought process that it takes to make music, if you like this, then the problem you solve is you want to improve your ability to think and solve problems. I can help. And let me tell you, I love this aspect of music making, and I get really into it. And I especially like watching little kids start to become good problem solvers. One of the things I do with my students, all of them, is I teach them how to play the blues in every key. And I teach them how to improvise a bass line in the left hand and solo in the right hand in every key. And this takes 2 or 3 years for them, but they all learn it. I have a method I've developed, and they all learn it. At 7, 8 years old, I've gotten these kids to do this. And what they have to do this is their first level test is they have to be able to improvise a bass line and a solo at the same time in whatever key I call out. And they sit there and they figure out, we talk about how to get there. I say, okay, you're going to figure out how to play this bass line by determining how many half steps apart these notes are in the left hand. You're going to figure out, using this pattern I taught you, what is the pentatonic scale that you can safely play on. These little kids, 8, 9, I've watched this 100 times, they do this. They sit there and they go through the process. And it took them months and months, but they stuck with it and they figured it out. I love that. They just learned to do something that 99% of musicians can't even conceive of, and a lot of jazz musicians can't do. And it's because they've got the cognitive. They understand what they are doing. And so it's not so bad. Aesthetic. This is probably the one that you all raised your hand for. Everybody knows musicians, we create aesthetic problems to solve. That's the best thing about music. Will my work be meaningful in terms of other than financial and community? Will people like my playing? Will I make something beautiful? I don't need to talk too much about this because I think you understand it, but I'm going to point out that it is a problem. You might be a fantastic musician, and you may be lying awake wondering if you're just a show-off, if there's anything deeply meaningful about your playing. If that's the case, you can address that, and you can address it in yourself, and you can address it with your students. You want to express yourself artistically. I can help. Recently, I had this wonderful conversation with one of my students about the piece Furlies. Have you all heard of this piece? Right. Who wants to hear it? And yet, it came up. I don't know whether she found it because I told her go find some Beethoven and she YouTubed and Furlies came up. But what we found were wonderful recordings of virtuosos who decided to play Furlies in concert for their audience. And it was wonderful because we got very different versions of Furlies. And we had this conversation about the aesthetics. One virtuoso played Furlies very strict, kept it very, under wraps, just played basically what Beethoven said. And another pianist, and I'm not going to mention names, he went crazy. He was all waving his arms around and being artistic. And these are high level, we're talking about world-class pianists who did this. And I said, that's two different approaches to this music. You can, if it's Beethoven really knew what he was doing. And you might want to just follow Beethoven's instructions, because unlike some composers, where you really have to ham it up, because the piece itself is not that interesting, with Beethoven, it's interesting. And if you ham it up, you may be getting in the way of some of the architecture. On the other hand, you may want to ham it up, because it may be that you want to express yourself through Furlies, and that's a different thing. And there's a spectrum, a continuum between those two extremes that you want to consider whenever you're playing. And it can vary depending on your audience. If you're playing for a bunch of 5-year-olds, maybe you want to ham it up a lot, right? If you're playing for a bunch of piano professors, maybe you don't want to ham it up at all. So, this is the problem of aesthetics. Self-actualization, realizing your potential, the ability to overcome limitations. This is my particular thing. This is what I advertise. I can get you to the next level, whatever that level is. And we do it by looking at what's the problem that's stopping you from being able to do what you want at the piano. If you're an adult, if you're a virtuoso pianist, but you're experiencing pain, let's find out where that pain came from. If you're a child and you don't really want to practice, let's find out why you don't want to practice and what we could do about that. You want to realize your growth potential. I can help. And so my favorite story about this is the adult that I teach. Now, I teach a number of adults. Adults are my favorite students because they never think they can do it, and within about 3 months, they can. Adults don't have that natural kind of little kid learning, but if you think about it, little kids take 3 years to learn how to walk properly. So even though they're marvelous learners, they don't know as much as adults do about how to be efficient with that learning and organize it. So if you can organize an adult properly, they can learn fast. So this one adult came to me and he didn't know how to play the piano at all. And forget about my perfectionist man. This adult, he had a club in his hand and he was ready to beat himself over the head for any little mistake he made. It was terrible. I felt so bad for him. I was like, dude, relax. It's okay. We're going to start with these kid pieces, and just because they're kid pieces doesn't make them easy. It doesn't make you a kid. But you're going to learn to play them and it's going to be okay. A year, and this guy stood up in front of an audience and he got there and he played in front of people and he didn't beat himself up. And he was shaking a little bit, but he got where he wanted to be, where he wasn't afraid to play in front of people. And that for him was light years above where he was. And we had to take him through a process to do that. It wasn't just, here's how to play the piano. It's like, let's talk about what's bothering you. Do you really think you have to be perfect every time you sit down? I'm not. You know, this is my thing. I love this, talking to people about what's going on with you, you know. How do we get you through this? Because when I was younger, my stage fright was so severe, I couldn't play. I couldn't even present my own level. I fell apart at the piano, and it took me 40 years to come to terms with why that was and to become able to play those scales like I did for you. So I love taking people through that. That's my problem that I like to solve. Transcendence, the last one. Will I be able to give back? This is a hard one to explain, but I think it's maybe the most important problem in some sense right now. The problem you're trying to solve is you want to contribute to society and make a difference. I can help. And I'm going to use myself as the example here, because lately I've been feeling guilty about being a piano teacher. I've been thinking the world is burning down, and I'm teaching piano. Should I be doing that? I mean, isn't it a luxury to be teaching the piano to people who can pay for it? Why should I do that? Shouldn't I be out, you know, working for the political campaign I want or stopping global climate change? And I've had to come to the conclusion that no, what I'm doing is important. Because what we're going to need in this world going forward are people who can think, people who can feel, people who can solve problems, people who aren't afraid of obstacles, people who can communicate and build community, people who can solve all the problems that I've given you today. And those are our students. Those are the people we're teaching right now. That's what they're learning to do. And if you can let them know they're learning to do that, they can take those skills of community and self-love and self-understanding into the world and use them in other places. Even if my students never become piano players, they will know something about how to solve a problem that they didn't think they could solve. And for me, that's everything. They'll be able to do those math problems they couldn't do, and they'll be able to become engineers, or they'll be able to talk to people and, you know, to a crowd, or whatever it takes. That's transcendence, self-actualization, safety. So I'm interested in hearing your questions. I wanted you to know this is a QR code that will take you to my website, abetterpianoteacher.com, and by extension, my Next Level Piano Lessons channel on YouTube. I also have a business card up here, and you're welcome to take one, please. I'm doing a mastermind this summer, and I'd love to have as many people join me as possible to talk about questions like this, questions about marketing, questions about best approaches in piano lessons, how to do things in piano lessons that maybe you didn't know you could do. If you subscribe to my website now, there is a book on my website that is currently free. Everyone who subscribes gets it. It's called Playing Well. This book will go on sale in about 2 months, so I'll take it off, but now it's free. So if you add your name to my list, you'll download it and get it for nothing. I would like to know what questions I can answer for you. What can I answer?
How are your students capable of knowing what their need is, or are you interpreting what that need is? Like, surely an 8-year-old doesn't say, I'm here to learn about transcendence. Like, so how are you interpreting that, I guess?
That's why I love doing this through the piano. Right? I'm not a therapist, I'm a pianist. So, I present them with a problem. I say, okay, I need you to play this C major scale, hands together, counting up and down. And we find out how well they do that. You know, if they do it really well, then their need is going to be later on that they're going to hit a wall and they're going to fall apart on a harder scale. And so I say, okay, I just wanted you to know, that you may have some confidence issues coming up, but don't be afraid, you're going to hit a wall. If they can't, even get it together to play at all, I'm like, okay, what's going on? I determine the need based on their reaction to the work that we do together. That's a great question. What other questions can I answer?
You mentioned how you use this to attract the right type of students to your studio. So what does the marketing materials look like for your particular studio? Like you said, you like to work on self-esteem is one of the ones I think it was, or...
Yeah, I think self-actualization is my best one. So this presentation, for instance, is one of my best marketing tools because I can talk about these kinds of things that are not so easy to see in a flyer. You know, I would never try to put all this in a flyer. But on my website, basically I say I can get you to the next level, whatever that is. So my website is an important piece. My piano channel, Next Level Piano Lessons, those are not about the mechanics of piano playing so much as they are about the mental game. You know, how to overcome your limitations, how to memorize something if you don't think you can. So that's where most of my marketing comes from. People who are on a journey. Yes?
So, do you audition or meet and greet before you start lessons? Because I find you can learn a lot in that session before you even start a formal lesson.
Absolutely. I have a consultation lesson. The consultation lesson is designed, I charge for it, it's not free, but you know, if they go ahead and sign up, then I reduce the rate to the enrollment rate, so it's kind of like that. The consultation lesson is designed to introduce ourselves to each other and see if it's a good fit. Most of the time, the people that find me are good fits, and I think that's just because of the way I market myself. Occasionally, someone comes and they're not. And, you know, as far as marketing goes, the best thing you can do is filter off people who are not a good match for you very soon. Because if you don't, if you attract the wrong person to you, they'll make your lives a nightmare. They'll be asking things of you that you don't want to provide. So I'm happy to say, you know, no, it's not a good fit. Although typically I don't have to do that. Typically they just don't come back. And that's fine. I have plenty of students. What other questions can I answer? These are great. Yes?
So as the students get older and they evolve, so I'm teaching a child right now for 3 years, and she's hit all sorts of like walls of teenagerism and all sorts of things.
Right.
At what point do you think, like it may just be that like you can't solve the problem through piano? I mean, with my particular student, like, you know, she's got all the ages where she won't talk to me, and I mean, it's not that she won't talk to me, she's just closed off. It's just how she is. They don't have that age, you know. And then every time the parent comes to me, I'm thinking, oh, this is it. She's going to tell me that it's just not going to work anymore. And it's usually never that. So, which is wonderful. But at what point do you say, look, I just don't know how to help. Like, I don't know how to continue this anymore. Do you ever do that?
Well, okay, so I was a middle school choral teacher for 4 years. And I taught a room full of middle schoolers a lot. And I learned a lot about a middle schooler. And here's what I can tell you first about middle schoolers. First, they're brain damaged. Literally, their brains have, if you ever saw that movie, I think it's Inside Out, is that? It's exactly what happens. Their brains are coming unglued. They're going from the capacity of a 5th grader to the capacity of a 3-year-old, except they've got the bodies of a 6th grader. They're coming unglued, unwired. They don't know where they are in their bodies, which are changing. They don't know who they are anymore. That's why they keep changing groups. That's why they keep changing hairstyles, because they're trying out stuff. And what they need in those years is adults in their lives that annoy them, but set the boundaries. So the best thing you can do for someone like that is just be there with them, be there for them. You know, some middle schoolers are highly focused, and they can work towards things, but other middle schoolers just need someone in their life that's consistent. The best thing my piano teacher did, I was a terrible piano student. 12 years, and I couldn't even read music at the end of it. I was horrible. But he was there for me all 12 years. What a gift. And I needed that, you know. So, you know, if you're not in a hurry, and if they're not trying to leave, just keep on coming back. Let them be there with you. Do whatever they can do. Find that place where what you have to offer and what they can get meets. Is that helpful?
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm about to start crying.
Me too. Me too. What other questions can I answer? Yes.
I think you mentioned, did you say that you teach neurodiverse students?
Did I teach?
Neurodiverse students?
Yes, I do. I don't go seeking them. I found that I have more than my fair share in my studio.
To your studio? Like you just feel like they just find you?
They find me. Because parents of these kids, you know, tell each other. You know, and so yeah, I've had, you know, kids on the spectrum, and I've had kids with ADHD, and you know, I'm neurodiverse, I'm neuroatypical myself, so I totally get them.
I was
Yeah.
curious because my son is on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And when I was fresh out of college and I taught, I didn't have a lot of neurodiverse students come to me. But after I came back to teach and I have a son now that's on the spectrum, I've just found that they just keep finding me.
Right.
And I was just curious about that, if that was happening to you too.
they just find me, and I'm happy to work with them, and the parents love it. You know, it's a good combination for us. More typical kids, I teach them, but I think probably we both, me and the neurotypical kids, we do better together than the typical kids. Yeah, not that you know, everybody's got something about them that's atypical, so I find that in those students anyway. What other questions can I answer? Well, if you have other questions, please come up and get my information. Reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you, and I so appreciate your listening to this presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
I graduated in 91, I stayed until 92. Are you an older than that? Really? Did I'm older. How old are you? I'm older than you. Like that? Well, were you a piano major? Who did you study with?
First Wilbur Price.
He was gone before I got there. I don't think he was there. I think so, yeah. Yeah. Were you there when Dan Bird was there?
Oh, yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah.
What a cool thing. Sure, I remember now. I wasn't a piano major though, so I hung out with a lot of people.
So you were in college?
I was in the college, yeah, but I spent all my time in the conservatory.
That's funny, I spent all that time.
Really?
I'm married.
Really?
Yeah.
No, that's neat. No, I pretended to be a conservatory student. Everybody thought I was one, but I wasn't. I got my bachelor's of music from Georgia State.
So what was your graduate degree?
English lit.
Okay.
Well, I'm a writer too, so it came in handy.
Sure. Yeah, well, that's funny. I love what you're saying because I have an adult student right now who